Sarah, clear out your desk. You're terminated. Effective immediately. The words echo in my mind as I sit here in this empty restaurant, watching my sister Margaret pour herself another glass of wine with shaking hands. 6 months ago, I never could have imagined we'd end up here, two sisters facing each other across a table littered with the wreckage of our family's secrets. But maybe I should start from the beginning. Or rather, from the end that became my beginning. Flashback, the public execution. The conference room fell silent as Margaret's Louboutin heels clicked against the hardwood floor like a countdown to my destruction. 20 pairs of eyes fixed on me, and I could feel the mixture of pity and relief radiating from my colleagues. Relief that it wasn't them in the hot seat. My hands trembled as I tried to gather the scattered papers of the Phillips case, knowing what was coming but still clinging to some desperate hope that this was just another one of Margaret's power plays. This level of incompetence is unacceptable. Margaret's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Sarah, you've embarrassed not only yourself but our entire firm. I'm Sarah Chen, the younger of the Chen sisters, though sometimes I wondered if Margaret and I truly shared the same DNA. Where she got those sharp cheekbones and steel spine, I inherited our mother's softer features and, according to Margaret, her tendency to dream rather than execute. The Phillips case. A simple real estate transaction that should have been routine. But I'd missed a crucial filing deadline, a mistake that could have cost the firm everything. In my defense, I'd been working 18-hour days for weeks, covering for two paralegals who'd quit without notice. But excuses don't fly in Margaret's world. I can explain, I started, but Margaret held up her perfectly manicured hand. The Phillips case required basic due diligence. Instead, you missed a filing deadline that could have cost us everything. Her voice remained eerily calm, which somehow made it worse. Fortunately, Tom caught your mistake before it became irreversible. Tom Wilson, standing near the door in his expensive suit, offered a slight nod. Was that sympathy in his eyes? Hard to tell with these corporate sharks. Tom had always been different, quieter, more observant than the others. But he was still one of them. Margaret, it was one mistake, Linda Rodriguez whispered from beside me. Linda was my only real friend in this place, the only one who understood what it was like to work under Margaret's iron fist. Everyone makes silence. Margaret's command froze the room. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Sarah, clear out your desk. You're terminated, effective immediately. The words hit like a physical blow to my chest. 6 years. 6 years of working under my sister's shadow, trying to prove myself, trying to show her I was more than the dreamy little sister she remembered. 6 years of coming in early, staying late, sacrificing any semblance of a personal life. And it all ended in this moment of public humiliation. You can't just... I started to stand, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed deafening in the silence. I can, and I am. Security will escort you out. Something snapped inside me then. Maybe it was the smirk on Tom's face, or the way Margaret was already checking her phone, dismissing me like I was nothing. The words escaped before I could stop them. Our parents would be ashamed of you. The room went dead silent. Margaret's face hardened, but for just a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Pain, maybe. Regret. It vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. Our parents aren't here, she said coldly, and their absence doesn't excuse mediocrity. Flashback growing up. I was 7 when I first realized that Margaret and I lived in different worlds, even though we shared the same house. She was already 14, serious and focused, while I was still trying to catch fireflies in mason jars and believing in fairy tales. Sarah, you need to focus, Margaret would say when she found me drawing horses in the margins of my homework. Success doesn't come to dreamers. But Mom would wink at me when Margaret wasn't looking. Dreams are just goals with wings, she'd whisper, ruffling my hair. Dad was different. Quieter. Always working, always worried about something. I didn't understand then that his law firm was already struggling, that the foundation of our family's success was built on quicksand. I grabbed my laptop and walked out, head held high despite the tears threatening to spill. Linda caught up with me at my desk, her dark eyes filled with genuine concern. This is wrong, she said. helping me pack my few personal belongings into a cardboard box. She's your sister, for God's sake. I laughed bitterly. Margaret stopped being my sister the day our parents died. She became my boss, my landlord, my keeper, everything except family. What will you do? Honestly, I have no idea. I shoved photos into the box, including one of Margaret and me at my college graduation. We were smiling then, real smiles, not the corporate masks we wore now. She controls everything, my job, my apartment, even my inheritance. Security appeared at my desk, two guards who looked uncomfortable with their assignment. Linda squeezed my hand. Call me later, okay? The walk of shame through the office felt endless. Whispers followed me to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Margaret watching from her glass office, phone already pressed to her ear, probably scheduling her next conquest. The discovery, outside, the spring air hit my face like a slap of reality. I finally let the tears fall, hot and angry on my cheeks. My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. Rent due on the 1st. Don't be late. Even in my moment of devastation, she couldn't resist twisting the knife. I sat on a nearby bench, watching people stream in and out of the towering office building where I'd spent the last 6 years of my life. How had we ended up here? The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was staring at my clock, unable to sleep after another argument with Margaret about my lack of commitment to the firm. Miss Chen? This is Officer Martinez with the Seattle Police Department. I'm calling about your parents. The drunk driver never saw the red light. Mom and Dad were killed instantly, they said. A mercy, they said. But there was no mercy in having to identify their bodies, in watching Margaret, barely 25 herself, suddenly become responsible for everything. I'll take care of you, she promised at the funeral, her hand on my shoulder as we stood beside their graves. I won't let anything happen to you. At the time, I thought she meant she'd protect me. I didn't realize she meant she'd control me. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Ms. Chen, this is Robert Kim from Riverside Legal Services. We're executing the will of your Aunt Grace Owens. Please contact us at your earliest convenience regarding your inheritance. Aunt Grace? I barely remembered her, Mom's eccentric sister who disappeared to Europe when I was young, sending postcards from different countries but never visiting. But inheritance? A third buzz, Margaret again. Dinner meeting tonight, 7 p.m. We need to discuss your future options. I stared at the messages, then at the building where my sister still ruled her kingdom. For the first time in years, something inside me refused to bend. I hit decline on Margaret's invitation. No, I whispered to myself. Not this time. The truth unveiled. The law office of Riverside Legal Services looked nothing like the sleek corporate environment I'd left behind. Cramped bookshelves lined the walls, and Robert Kim's desk was buried under stacks of papers that would have given Margaret an anxiety attack. Your aunt was quite specific about her wishes, he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses and pulling out a thick envelope. The house on Maple Street, along with its contents and a modest trust fund, goes to you. My heart stopped. Maple Street? That's where I live. Yes, the Victorian 3-story at 1247 Maple. He slid a photograph across the desk, the same house Margaret had been collecting rent from me for the past 3 years. There must be some mistake. My sister, Margaret, manages all our family properties. Robert shook his head slowly. This property was never part of your parents' estate. Your aunt purchased it 20 years ago. She left explicit instructions that you, and only you, were to inherit it upon her death. The room spun. All those rent checks. All those threats about late payments. All those times Margaret had used my housing situation to control my decisions. When did my aunt die? I whispered. 3 years ago. He checked his notes with practiced efficiency. The executor of her will tried contacting you multiple times, but your sister informed us you were unavailable due to a family tragedy. 3 years ago. Right when our parents died. Right when Margaret took control of everything. I remember that first month after the funeral. I was a mess. couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't make the simplest decisions. Margaret handled everything: the funeral arrangements, the estate, even my mail. I'm protecting you, she said when I asked about some documents that had arrived. You're in no state to deal with legal matters. I trusted her. Of course, I trusted her. She was my big sister, and she just lost our parents too. I thought she was grieving in her own way, channeling her pain into taking care of me. I was such a fool. My phone buzzed again, Margaret's 15th call since this morning. I declined it with more satisfaction than I'd felt in years. What happens now? I asked Robert. The house is yours, free and clear. Here are the deed and keys. He pushed them across the desk. The trust fund provides for maintenance and property taxes. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to maintain the house and provide some security. Confrontation. I left Robert's office in a daze, clutching the documents like a lifeline. On the street, I nearly collided with Kevin Park, my childhood friend who still lived down the block from my house, apparently. Sarah, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I showed him the papers. His eyes widened as he read, and a low whistle escaped his lips. Holy shit, he whispered. Margaret's been charging you rent for a house you own? Sarah, that's fraud. Like, actual criminal fraud. My phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. Where are you? Margaret demanded without preamble. We need to discuss your situation. My situation? The laugh that escaped me was sharp and bitter. You mean how you've been collecting rent on a house I own? Silence on the other end. Then, who have you been talking to? Aunt Grace's lawyer. Interesting timing, isn't it? Right after I had to terminate you for incompetence. The manipulation was so blatant, so calculated, that it took my breath away. Come to my office now. We need to handle this privately. No. The word felt foreign but powerful. I'm done with private family discussions that somehow always end with you in control. Sarah, you're being dramatic. I was protecting you. Kevin touched my arm, pointing to a cafe across the street. I nodded and started walking, Margaret's voice still coming through the phone. It wasn't stealing, she said. I was managing your assets. Assets I didn't know I had. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Building something new. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom's old recipe box, still sitting in the kitchen of what I now knew was my house. About the way Dad used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings, flipping them so high they almost hit the ceiling. About how Margaret used to braid my hair before school, even when she was already running late for her own classes. When had we lost all of that? When had love become control, protection become imprisonment? 2 weeks later, Linda Rodriguez sat across from me at my kitchen table, her coffee growing cold as she stared at me in disbelief. You want to do what? Turn the house into a legal aid center, I repeated. The first floor has enough space for offices, and I can live upstairs. And you want me to leave Margaret's firm to join you? She laughed, but I could see the interest in her eyes. You've seen how many people get turned away because they can't afford Margaret's rates. We could help them. Linda leaned forward. This isn't just about helping people, is it? No, I admitted. But wanting justice doesn't mean we can't do good along the way. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts. I know at least 3 paralegals who'd jump ship immediately. She hesitated. And there's this guy, David Martinez. He runs a small practice focused on tenant rights. He's been looking for partners. Before I could respond, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Margaret standing on my porch. My porch, I reminded myself. Back door, I whispered to Linda. Text me later. Sister versus sister. I took my time answering the door, watching Margaret shift her weight from foot to foot, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood that her professional demeanor usually concealed. Finally, she pushed past me without invitation. We need to talk about this ridiculous idea of yours. Which one? The legal aid center? Or pressing charges for fraud? She spun around, her composure cracking slightly. Is that what this is about? Money? Fine. Name your price. It's not about money. I cross my arms, drawing strength from standing in my own home. It's about you lying to me for 3 years. I was protecting our family's reputation. You weren't ready to know you owned a house, to make your own decisions. When exactly was I going to be ready, Margaret? She paced the room, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floors that I now realized I owned. You don't understand what it takes to succeed in this world. I've spent years building our reputation. Your reputation, I corrected. And now you're worried I'll ruin it. She stopped pacing, and for a moment, I saw the exhausted woman behind the polished facade. What do you want? I want you to leave. This is my house, and you're trespassing. Don't be childish. I pointed to the corners of the room. Security cameras. Installed this morning. Would you like me to call the police? The network, Margaret left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows, but I felt strangely calm. For the first time in 3 years, I was truly in control of my own life. Within a month, the sign went up. Chen Community Legal Services. Linda and 4 other former employees from Margaret's firm had joined us. David Martinez brought his existing clients and an energy that made even the longest days feel manageable. David was different from the corporate lawyers I was used to. Where they wore their ambition like armor, he wore his compassion like a badge of honor. He was the son of immigrants, the first in his family to graduate college, let alone law school. His practice focused on tenant rights, workplace discrimination, and family law, the unglamorous cases that actually changed lives. We've got 10 new cases this week, he announced during our morning meeting, his dark eyes bright with enthusiasm. 3 evictions, 2 workplace discrimination cases, and 5 family court matters. Any conflicts with Margaret's firm? I asked. Not yet. He hesitated. But word is, she's losing clients. The Phillips case you supposedly mishandled? They switched to us yesterday. Linda touched my arm. There's something else you should know. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. We have a mole in Margaret's firm. What? Tom Wilson. He's been feeding us information. Apparently, he's not happy with how Margaret's running things. I remembered Tom's sympathetic look the day I was fired. Why would he help us? Because, a voice said from the doorway, your sister's empire is built on sand. Tom stood there, looking decidedly less polished than usual in jeans and a casual shirt. Nice sign, he said, walking in. Mind if we talk privately? The insider's truth, in my office, Tom got straight to the point. Margaret's been cutting corners for years. Nothing illegal, exactly, but ethical gray areas. The partners are nervous. Why tell me this? Because you're offering something we've forgotten about. Actual justice. He handed me a flash drive. Client lists, billing records, internal memos. Use it however you want. After he left, David found me still staring at the drive. You okay? I wanted to hurt Margaret, I said slowly. But this could destroy her. He sat across from me, his presence somehow both calming and energizing. Then don't use it to destroy her. Use it to help people. I looked up at him, struck by the warmth in his dark eyes. Is that what you do? I think you already know what you want to do, he smiled. The question is whether you're ready to do it. That night, I dreamed about Mom teaching me to make her famous lasagna. I was maybe 8, standing on a step stool so I could reach the counter, my hands covered in flour. The secret ingredient, she whispered conspiratorially, isn't in the recipe. It's in the love you put into it. I woke up with tears on my cheeks, wondering when I'd stop believing in the power of love over control. The community response. Our legal aid center became more than a business, it became a movement. Sarah Williams, a young mother facing eviction, was our first major success. She sat in her waiting room clutching her notice, her 5-year-old daughter coloring quietly beside her. Hi, I said, sitting beside her. I'm Sarah, and I'm going to help you. For the first time since starting this journey, I felt completely certain of my purpose. Margaret had taught me that power comes from making others feel small, but watching Sarah Williams' relief as we reviewed her case, I realized there was another kind of power, the kind that comes from helping others stand tall. The local news picked up our story. Jen's sisters transform local legal scene. Read the headline with a photo of me helping a client. I wondered if Margaret had seen it. My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. Heard about your little project. Hope you know what you're doing. I showed David the message. She's not going to make this easy. Good things rarely are, he said, standing up. Come on, we've got clients waiting. The counterattack. Tom's warnings proved prophetic. Margaret's response was swift and ruthless. Meet me at Riverside Park, 30 minutes. Important, his text read. Linda read the message over my shoulder. Be careful. Margaret might have figured out he's helping us. The park was busy with lunch crowds, but I spotted Tom easily, pacing near the fountain like a caged animal. Margaret's planning something, he said without preamble. She called an emergency partner meeting this morning about your aunt's estate. She's claiming you're mentally unfit to manage the inheritance. My stomach dropped. Can she do that? She's got 3 psychiatrists ready to testify about your history of emotional instability and poor decision-making. He ran a hand through his hair. She's going after guardianship. That's insane. I'm running a successful practice, which she'll paint as a manic episode. Think about it. Quitting a prestigious law firm to start a charity? Cutting ties with your family? She's building a narrative. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air like a blade. Well, isn't this cozy? Margaret stood there, immaculate in her charcoal suit, 2 senior partners flanking her like bodyguards. Taking meetings in parks now, Tom? How unprofessional. Tom straightened. Just getting some air. Interesting choice of company. She turned to me with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. We filed the guardianship papers this morning. For your own good, of course. I matched her smile. Did you include the part about collecting rent on my property? A simple misunderstanding. I'm sure the judge will understand I was protecting you from yourself. She glanced at her expensive watch. The hearing's next week. To clean yourself up for court. Preparation for war. Back at the office, David was waiting with a stack of files and a determined expression. Heard about the guardianship claim. We've got options. I know what I want to do. I sat down, my mind suddenly clear. Remember Sarah Williams, the eviction case? And the Thompson family, and the Ramirez kids, I want them all at that hearing. He smiled slowly. Character witnesses. Better. Real people whose lives were changed because I was supposedly too unstable to help them. The next few days were a blur of preparation. While Margaret painted me as mentally unfit on every news outlet that would listen, we quietly gathered our witnesses. David worked late into the night, preparing statements and documentation. I found myself thinking about Dad more during those long nights. He died before he could see what I'd accomplished, before he could know that his younger daughter had found her own path to justice. You have your mother's heart, he used to tell me. But you'll need steel in your spine to survive in this world. Maybe I'd finally found that steel. The night before the hearing, I found David alone in the office, surrounded by papers. Why are you helping me? I asked. This could hurt your practice too. He looked up from his work, and something in his expression made my heart skip. Because you reminded me why I became a lawyer. He stood, moving closer. And because you're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong, I admitted. I'm terrified. Good. He smiled, reaching for my hand. Use it. Channel that fear into fighting for what's right. His hand was warm and steady, and for a moment, we stood there in the quiet office, the weight of tomorrow heavy between us. My phone buzzed. Margaret, finally. Last chance. Drop this ridiculous legal aid project, come back to the firm, and I'll withdraw the guardianship petition. I showed David the message. What are you going to do? He asked. I typed my response. See you in court, sis. The hearing. The courthouse was packed. On one side sat Margaret with her team of expensive lawyers and psychiatric experts. On the other side sat our witnesses, real people whose lives had been changed by our work. Sarah Williams held her daughter's hand. The Thompson family sat quietly, dignified in their Sunday best. The Ramirez kids, now with healthcare thanks to our intervention, looked nervous but determined. Margaret's lawyer painted me as an unstable woman having a breakdown, abandoning a successful career for delusions of grandeur. Her psychiatrist testified about my pattern of self-destructive behavior and inability to make rational decisions. Then it was our turn. Sarah Williams took the stand first. Ms. Chen saved our home, she said simply. When everyone else turned us away because we couldn't afford their fees, she helped us for free. My daughter still has a roof over her head because of her. One by one, our clients testified. Not about my mental state, but about the practical impact of our work. About evictions prevented, discrimination cases won, families reunited. Your Honor, David said in his closing argument, the question before this court isn't whether Sarah Chen made conventional choices. It's whether those choices demonstrate mental incapacity or moral courage. The evidence speaks for itself. The judge took less than 10 minutes to decide. Petition denied. Ms. Chen, you're clearly competent to manage your own affairs. Case dismissed. The revelation. That evening, David and I were celebrating with our team when Kevin arrived with an old manila envelope. Found this while cleaning out my mom's attic, he said. Thought you should see it. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. Local lawyer sacrifices career to save family firm, the headline read. The photo showed a young Margaret standing beside our father. I read the article with growing amazement. It detailed how Margaret had taken the fall for our father's mishandling of client funds, accepting a suspension rather than let the scandal destroy the firm. She was 22, fresh out of law school. She never told me, I whispered. There's more, Kevin said. My mom kept all the articles. Margaret spent those suspended years working 3 jobs to keep you in private school and support the family. Suddenly, so many things made sense. Margaret's obsession with control, her fear of financial instability, her desperate need to protect our family's reputation. She'd sacrificed her early career for us, and somewhere along the way, that sacrifice had twisted into something darker. Dinner with the devil, Margaret chose an exclusive restaurant for our meeting, renting the entire dining room. Classic Margaret, controlling the environment even for a family dinner. She sat at our usual table, already nursing a glass of wine, looking more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. You came, she said as I sat down. Almost didn't. I placed the old newspaper article on the white tablecloth. Want to tell me about this? She stared at the yellowed paper, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched it. Where did you get this? Kevin found it. 15 years is a long time to keep a secret. It wasn't relevant. You took the fall for Dad's mistake, worked 3 jobs to keep me in school. Seems pretty relevant. The waiter approached, but Margaret waved him away with a sharp gesture. That was a different time, she said, taking a long sip of wine. When did it change? When did protecting me become controlling me? She set down her glass carefully. The day of the accident. The police called me first. Did you know that? I had to identify their bodies while you were still at that art gallery opening, oblivious to the world. I remembered that night. I'd been so proud of having a piece in a group show, so excited to share the news with Mom and Dad when they got back from their client meeting. They never came home. Dad's firm was in chaos, Margaret continued. His partners were circling like vultures, looking for any excuse to push us out. You were falling apart, couldn't make the simplest decisions. Someone had to take control. So you did what you always do, sacrificed yourself to protect me. And look how you repay me. Her voice hardened. Starting a competing firm, stealing my clients. Your clients? I leaned forward. You mean like Sarah Williams, who couldn't afford your retainer while facing eviction? Or the Ramirez family fighting for their grandmother's medical care? Don't be naive. Pro bono work doesn't pay the bills. Actually, it does. I pulled out our financial reports. We're profitable, Margaret. Small, but growing, and we're helping people. She started to respond when Tom burst into the restaurant, his face flushed with urgency. Margaret, we have a problem. He stopped short, seeing me. I didn't know you had company. Speak, Margaret commanded. The Phillips case. They're filing a bar association complaint about the billing irregularities. Margaret's face went white. That's impossible. Those records were sealed. They had help. Tom looked directly at me. Someone with access to our systems. You think I started. No. Margaret cut in, her voice deadly quiet. This is your handiwork, isn't it, Tom? Finally making your move. Tom straightened his shoulders. The partners meet tomorrow. We're recommending your immediate removal. After everything I've done for you. You've done nothing but rule through fear, he snapped. It's over, Margaret. He left, leaving us in heavy silence. Margaret's hands shook as she poured more wine, red drops spattering the white tablecloth like blood. Congratulations, she said bitterly. You win. This isn't what I wanted. No? Isn't this your perfect revenge? Taking everything from me like I supposedly took from you? I turned down Tom's coup offer, I said quietly. Twice. She froze, glass halfway to her lips. What? He approached me weeks ago. I said no. Why? Because destroying you won't fix us. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Margaret, when did you last take a vacation? Have a real relationship? Live any life outside that office? I had responsibilities. To who? Dad's gone. I'm grown. Who are you protecting now? Her glass clattered to the table, wine spreading across the white cloth. I don't know how to be anything else, she whispered. Redemption. Then let me help you. Like you helped me. By destroying my career? By saving you from it. I pulled out a legal document. Tom doesn't have the votes without my support. She stared at the paper. What's the catch? Step down as managing partner. Take a sabbatical. Let someone else carry the weight for a while. And become what? A charity lawyer like you? Become my sister again. I finally caught her hand. Remember her? The one who worked 3 jobs to keep me in school? Tears formed in her eyes, the first I'd seen since our parents' funeral. I was so angry when you started your firm, she admitted. Not because of the competition, but because you were succeeding without me. I learned from the best. I squeezed her hand, even if the best lost her way. Her phone buzzed. Probably the partners demanding answers. She ignored it. The guardianship petition, she said. I'll withdraw it. And the firm? Take the sabbatical. Find yourself. The firm will be there if you want it, but on new terms. She nodded slowly, then looked around at the empty restaurant. I really have controlled everything, haven't I? Start small. Maybe next time we can eat somewhere with actual people. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Baby steps. New beginnings. Outside, David was waiting in his car as he'd promised. Margaret saw him and raised an eyebrow. He seems devoted. He is. She nodded approvingly. Good. You deserve that. We stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, years of hurt and hope hanging between us like morning fog. Lunch next week? I offered. In public. Baby steps, she repeated and walked away. Watching her go, I realized some victories don't feel like winning. They feel like the first painful step toward healing. Reconciliation. 3 days later, Margaret came to my house carrying a box of family photos. She looked different, jeans and a sweater instead of her usual power suit, hair loose around her shoulders. Nice sign, she said, nodding toward the Chen Community Legal Services placard visible through the window. Dad would have hated it. Mom would have loved it. She picked up a photo from the box. Us as kids, gap-toothed and grinning in matching Christmas dresses. God, you were such a happy child, she said softly. Until you became my warden instead of my sister. She flinched. I deserve that. Did you? I poured us both coffee from Mom's old china set. I've been thinking about what you said about the accident, about having to identify their bodies alone. Ancient history. Is it? Because you haven't taken a day off since then. She sipped her coffee, avoiding my eyes. Someone had to be strong. And someone had to be controlled? The words came out sharper than I intended. I was trying to protect you. From what? From making my own choices, my own mistakes? From ending up like them. Her cup clattered against the saucer. Dad's firm was drowning in debt. Mom knew it, covered for him, enabled him. Their last fight was about money. The night of the accident, Margaret continued, her voice barely above a whisper. They were driving to an emergency client meeting. Dad was desperate for cash flow. Mom wanted him to come clean, admit the firm was failing. She wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. When the police called, all I could think was, someone has to do better. I had to protect what was left of our family. By becoming a dictator? By becoming successful. She stood up, pacing the small kitchen. Every decision, every sacrifice was to ensure we'd never be vulnerable again. Including stealing my inheritance? Including making sure you didn't waste it on dreams that wouldn't pay the bills. She spun around, her eyes blazing. Like helping people for free, like throwing away your potential on lost causes. David's voice cut through our argument. Are those lost causes? We turned to find him in the doorway, holding a stack of photographs, our client success stories. The Ramirez family kept their grandmother's house, he continued, laying the photos on the table one by one. Sarah Williams' daughter is thriving in school. The Thompson kids have health care. That's different, Margaret protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Why? Because it doesn't make millions? I stepped closer to her. You want to talk about waste? Look at yourself, Margaret. When's the last time you smiled like this? I held up our childhood photo. She stared at it, then at the client photos spread across the table. I don't know how to be any other way. Yes, you do. I touched her arm gently. The sister who worked 3 jobs to keep me in school, she knew exactly who she was. That girl was naive. That girl was brave, David said quietly, like her sister is now. The workshop, Margaret sank back into her chair, looking suddenly exhausted. The partners want answers by tomorrow. So give them some. I sat beside her. Take the sabbatical, travel, learn who Margaret is without the power suits and corner office. She picked up another photo. Mom and Dad at their last Christmas, arms around each other, unaware that they had only 3 months left. They made so many mistakes, she said. Yes, I agreed. And so have we. The question is, what do we do now? She was quiet for a long moment, studying the faces in the photographs, not just our family, but our clients, the people we'd helped. That legal aid workshop you ran last week, she said finally. Do you need more volunteers? Always. I might know some lawyers. Good ones. Looking for meaning beyond billable hours. David smiled. We could use the help. Margaret stood, gathering her purse with the same efficiency she brought to everything. At the door, she turned back. That photo of us as kids, could I have a copy? Better idea. I grabbed my keys. Let's get dinner somewhere casual, with actual people. We can talk about everything, the firm, the workshop, whatever you want. Including this thing between you and him? She nodded toward David with a hint of her old sharpness. Baby steps, remember? For the first time in years, she laughed, a real laugh, not her courtroom chuckle. Fine, but I'm not eating anywhere with paper napkins. Progress, not perfection, David quipped as we left. 6 months later, the autumn breeze rustled through the community center courtyard as volunteers set up chairs for our outdoor legal clinic. Margaret adjusted a stack of intake forms, looking almost comfortable in her business casual attire. You're color coding the intake forms now? I teased. Organization matters, she said, but with a smile. Even in legal aid. Since starting her sabbatical, she'd thrown herself into our community work with the same intensity she'd once reserved for corporate law. The difference was in her eyes. They were clearer now, more present. Linda rushed over, waving a newspaper. Have you seen this? The headline read, Chen's sisters transform local legal scene. Below was a photo of Margaret and me at last week's tenant rights workshop. Dad would have had a heart attack, Margaret said, tracing the words with her finger. Mom would have framed it, I counted. David appeared with a wrapped package. Inside was the old photo of Margaret and me as kids, professionally restored and framed, alongside a recent picture of us at the clinic. The inscription read, The Chen sisters, then and now. Margaret touched the glass gently. We've come full circle, haven't I? Before I could respond, Tom walked into the courtyard. Margaret tensed, but he raised his hands in peace. Just here to help, he said. If you'll have me. I looked at Margaret, letting her decide. She straightened her shoulders. Intake forms are color-coded. Try to keep up. He grinned and grabbed a stack of blue forms. The courtyard filled quickly with clients and volunteer lawyers. Margaret worked the crowd like she was born to it, her corporate experience lending authority to her compassion. Ms. Chen. Sarah Williams' daughter ran up, clutching a school paper. I got an A on my essay about community heroes. I wrote about you both. Margaret read it, her hands trembling slightly. The Chen sisters show that being strong doesn't mean being mean. Out of the mouths of babes, David said, slipping his arm around my waist. Pretty smart kid. Kevin arrived with coffee for everyone. Like old times, he said, except better. Margaret watched as Linda trained new volunteers, her expression thoughtful. I never understood before, she said quietly. The power of helping instead of controlling. Better late than never. I squeezed her hand. Ms. Chen. A client called from the registration table. We need your expertise. She straightened, lawyer mode engaging, but softer now, more human. Duty calls. As she walked away, David hugged me from behind. Proud of you both. We're still figuring it out, I admitted. That's what family does. Full circle. The day flew by in a blur of consultations and coffee. As sunset painted the courtyard golden, Margaret and I sat on the steps watching volunteers pack up. The partners called, she said casually. They want me back. My heart stopped. And I told them I needed more time. She smiled. Turns out, helping people is addictive. Does this mean you're joining us permanently? Let's say I'm exploring my options. She nodded toward David, who was helping load supplies. Speaking of which, when are you going to make that official? When are you going to let me set you up with Tom? She threw a paper clip at me. Baby steps, remember? Always. Sarah Williams approached with a container of homemade cookies, her daughter in tow. Thank you both, she said, for everything. After they left, Margaret stood and brushed off her pants. Want to grab dinner? Somewhere with paper napkins? Actually, I pulled out an old photograph. I was thinking we could cook Mom's lasagna recipe. She stared at the photo. Mom in the kitchen, both of us helping, covered in flour and laughing. I haven't cooked since. I know. Me neither. She took a deep breath. We'll probably mess it up. Probably. The kitchen will be a disaster. Definitely. She linked her arm through mine. Let's do it. Epilogue: the kitchen. As we walked home, the Chen Community Legal Services sign glowed behind us. Ahead lay our house, no longer a symbol of control and resentment, but of reconciliation and new beginnings. Hey, Sarah, Margaret said as we reached the porch. Yeah, thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for finding your way back. Inside, we pulled out Mom's recipe box, flour soon dusting the counter like snow. And if we both got teary-eyed when the familiar scent filled the kitchen, neither of us mentioned it. Some victories come with fanfare and headlines. Others come quietly, in flour-dusted kitchens and paper napkin dinners, and sisters finding their way back to each other, one recipe, one case, one moment at a time. The lasagna was imperfect, but then again, so were we. And somehow, that made it taste even better. David arrived just as we were pulling it from the oven, bringing wine and his easy smile. Tom followed 20 minutes later, carrying flowers and looking nervous. I didn't know this was a double date, Margaret said, but she was smiling. It's not a date, I protested. It's family dinner. Same thing. David laughed, kissing my cheek. As we sat around the table, the same table where Margaret and I had fought so many times, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's creation. Building something better from the ashes of what came before. To family, Margaret raised her wine glass. The one we're born into and the one we choose. To family, we echoed. Outside, Seattle's skyline glittered in the distance, full of people with legal problems we could solve, families we could help keep together, dreams we could protect. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases, new opportunities to choose love over control. But tonight was about two sisters who'd finally found their way home to each other, one imperfect lasagna at a time.